Hey guys, it's Monday, and this is your lesson for today. I'm not here, but please remember that I still have my computer and I can still check on you to see what you're doing. In order to do your assignment in Schoology, you'll need to know two very important things. These two things we've already talked about, but I'm going to give you a refresher course, so pay attention. Parallel versus perpendicular lines. We know that parallel lines are two lines that never intersect. We know that perpendicular lines are two lines that not only do they intersect, but they intersect in a very specific way. They make right angles. If we are looking at the equations of two lines and we want the two lines to be parallel, then they must have the same slope. They also must have different y-intercepts. Now, if you look on the board, in blue, it says that parallel lines have same slope but different y-intercepts. So let's do an example of parallel lines. An equation of one line might say y equals 2x plus 1. So a line that would be parallel to that must have the same slope, this number right here. We've talked about that the slope is the number in front of the x. So as long as our equation says y equals 2x plus any number other than the number 1, we're in great shape. So let's say 2. Another parallel line would be y equals 2x minus 5, or y equals 2x plus 1,000. Any number other than 1 would be parallel to y equals 2x plus 1, as long as the slope is always 2. Now that's simple enough. Now let's talk about perpendicular lines and their equations. Perpendicular lines, they do not have the same slope. They actually have to have opposite slopes as well as reciprocal slopes. If you look on the board, in red it says perpendicular lines, opposite reciprocal slopes, and any y-intercept, meaning the y-intercept does not matter on perpendicular lines. It does matter with parallel lines, but perpendicular lines, it makes no difference what the y-intercept is. It can be the same or it can be different. Well, we know what opposite means. Opposite means if one is plus, the other must be negative. Reciprocal, however, if you're not sure what that means, I'll show you really quickly. If I had the fraction 2/3, the reciprocal would be 3/2. It's just flipped. If it is a negative slope, negative 2/3, then the reciprocal is negative 3/2. So you don't change the sign for reciprocal, you just flip the number. Now, with perpendicular lines, not only do you have to change the sign, but you have to flip the fraction or the number. So that's why we call it opposite reciprocal. Add my S. All right, so let's look at an example. Let's use y equals 2/3 x plus 5. If I'm looking for a perpendicular line, I have to take this slope, I have to take the opposite of that, which is negative, because this is positive 2/3. I have to take the opposite, but I also have to take the reciprocal, which is 3/2, x plus, and it could be 5, it could be 17, it could be 300, it does not matter. Let's do another one. There's one set of perpendicular lines. Let's say y equals 2x plus 3. A perpendicular line must take the number 2, we must take the opposite sign, which is negative, but we also must take the reciprocal of 2. Now 2 is an understood 2/1, so the reciprocal is 1/2. X plus, it can be 3 if you want to, it can be 3. It's fine. Okay, so there is another set of perpendicular lines. If you need to watch this video more than once, please feel free. Now this brings me to another point. We know about parallel and perpendicular lines, but let's talk about an equation where they're neither parallel nor perpendicular. So if I had y equals 2x plus 4 and y equals 7x minus 3, we see that these slopes are not the same, so they're not parallel, and I'm going to abbreviate. And we see that they're not opposites or reciprocals, so they're not perpendicular either. Now they're going to try to trick you by maybe making them just opposites or just making them just opposites or just reciprocals, but that doesn't make them perpendicular. They have to be both opposite and reciprocal to be perpendicular. So let me give you an example of how they're going to try to trick you. Y equals 1/2 x plus 3. They're going to want you to look at this this slope, and they're going to say, okay, well, what is y equals negative 1/2 x plus 3? And you're going to say, oh, those are opposite. Maybe they're perpendicular. No way. These are not perpendicular because this number 1 over 2 needs to be flipped, or the reciprocal, which we call 2 over 1. So that's not perpendicular. That's one way they're going to try to trick you. The other way is they're going to try to just take the reciprocal and not do the opposite. So if we had y equals 2/3 x plus 4 and y equals 3/2 x minus 6, you're going to look at these two slopes. You notice that they are reciprocals, but they are not opposites. Therefore, they are not perpendicular either. And what we call these lines is they are neither parallel nor perpendicular, so our answer to these are just neither. Why? Because they do not have the same slopes, and they don't have opposite reciprocal slopes. They just have reciprocal. So, one more time, in order for lines to be parallel, let me move this back paper. In order for lines to be parallel, they have to have the same slope and different y-intercepts. In order for them to be perpendicular, they have to have opposite slopes, one positive, one negative, and the number needs to be flipped, or what we call reciprocal. That's the mathematical spicy word term. So here's another example. Positive 2 over 1, negative 1 over 2. That is opposite and reciprocal. That's what you need to know about parallel lines versus perpendicular lines. And remember, we added one more. It could be neither. Now you're ready to do your lesson in Schoology. It is page 77 and 78. And all you have to do is write the words parallel, perpendicular, or neither. Don't worry about justifying it just yet.